Welcome to the TLL Legacy League Podcast, presented by ScottZolak.com.
Breaks in a bus, breaks on the car, breaks to make you a superstar, breaks to win and breaks to lose. And these here breaks rock your shoes, and these are the breaks. Break it up, break it up, break it up.
Did you miss us? I'm Coach Ded Faulkner, also known as Matt Bird, and I'm back with the Week 6 TLL Legacy League Podcast. We've got a ton to cover in this episode. We'll be recapping scores so you know whether you won in Week 5. We'll be introducing our power rankings for the first time this season so you know where your team fits in the hierarchy of the TLL. And we're going to be introducing a new segment called First and Goal, in which we ask the burning questions that you're dying to know. And we'll be predicting all the Week 6 games. But I can't do that all by myself, that's just silly. So I'm going to need some help, and I've got just the man for the job. It's my co-host and co-founder of the TLL Legacy League, Steve Yan, also known as Cheap Catch.
So we haven't really gotten a chance to speak since before Thanksgiving. The podcast has been down for a little while, so good to hear your voice.
Yeah, man. Wow, it's been a while. I am coming live from a park bench in Davis, and I also have an audience. 3 people are really curious about what I am doing.
So how are your holidays?
Well, it's finals weeks. I'd like to say week, but it's actually weeks. So I'm pretty much stuck in like Groundhog's Day of that. I'm exhausted. Today I have a paper to finish up, and then right on to another final. So that's where I'm at right now.
I feel your pain.
How are you?
No, I'm good. I actually got all my grading out of the way. I'm pretty much done for the semester and ready to do some drinking. Got a Facebook message that Tony Mara is going to be in New York and is looking forward to 3 days of drinking.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
Why don't we move on to discuss some of the most recent scores?
Touchdown! Week 5 scores.
And starting right out here, we've got my Vikings falling to Slim's Bears, 27-21 in overtime, and that puts the Vikings at 2-3 on the season, and the Bears at 4-1.
Well, the Vikings had a chance to take the division lead there, but they lost that opportunity. How'd you feel about that game?
You know, it was another overtime loss.
Vince Evans has your number this year.
I went down pretty big early in that game, 21-7.
Yeah.
I think I was down at halftime, and he was getting the ball. I had Ted Brown going. You know, with Matt Blair on that defense, I knew that I could give myself a shot. Ted Brown, I think, put up 238 yards in that game. I really did play great in the second half, and if I had won the overtime coin toss, I'm pretty sure I would have won that game, but that's how it goes.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive comeback. Chicago had you down. They also played really well the week before, so I liked how the Vikings came back in that. Ted Brown was really awesome. Unfortunately, Walter Payton wasn't quite as awesome, but he was awesome enough.
Oh, and speaking of the Bears, as long as we're on the subject of that, we should talk about their Week 4 victory over Atlanta. What, 34-28 in overtime, if my memory serves correctly?
It was 30-24. Yeah, and I thought an unlikely victory, but now looking into the future, the Falcons have given up 30 points or more in the last 2 games. So.
And we'll get on to them in a minute, but the Bears are rolling, absolutely rolling.
They are rolling, and with Detroit at 1-4, I think Detroit, has the most talent in that division, but now they're 1-4. The Bears don't have a lot of competition now, and they're already starting to stretch their lead.
It's true. We've got Brian's Saints 14-13 over my Patriots. The Saints improved to 4-1 on the year. My Patriots 0-5.
What's happening with the Patriots, man? I think the whole world wants to know. Why are they 0-5?
I'd like to make some excuses, and I will. Let me start by making some excuses.
Why not,
actually.
man? Go right for it.
Yeah. Well, for one thing, you look at that team, and you see a couple of wide receivers with like 69 max speed and 69 receptions for the other guy. The last couple of years, their offense has been outstanding and just cheap catches galore. And I think I saw that in the draft, and I started salivating a little bit. And so I picked him, and I shouldn't have. I don't think, because there's really nothing there. There's no running game to speak of, and the receivers are kind of wasted with a quarterback that's as bad as Grogan. I don't know if you've checked out his rating, but it's in the 50s. He's completing something like 35% of his passes. So all that talent is wasted. And then, okay, I suck.
Grogan, I had the Patriots in 1977, and Grogan was easily the weak link on that team. I could not get the ball to my receivers.
But Sam Bam was still pretty good back then, and I don't even know if he's on the team anymore. If he is, I haven't used him because he's no good.
No, I think he was injured this year, so he's not on the team. They lost that. And they have a couple of marginal running backs, as you said, not horrible, but not great.
I've had no success running the ball. The only success I've had running the ball is with Russ Francis, and you hate to use one of your best receivers in the backfield because you need them. But I don't know. A lot of their losses have been close ones like this, and I had the Saints number most of the way and just couldn't put the game away. And Brian pulled a Brian, ended up winning that game pretty late.
I think the Patriots are going to be one of those teams. There's going to be a handful of teams that don't have good records right now, but are going to play major spoilers because they have enough talent to beat teams, even though they've put themselves behind the 8 ball.
I think I'm starting to figure them out. And we'll talk about our predictions later, but they have the Chargers coming up this week, so I'm not really sure they're going to get off the winless streak this week, but we'll see. Going with the theme of me, I guess, at the top of the week here, we have the Rams, my Rams, beating the 49ers 21-0. And I will say, the Rams had one play in the first half. Lou had a 6-minute drive to start the game in which he didn't score any points. I got the ball back, and I threw an interception on my very first play. And then Lou had another long drive that ended the half, and he didn't get any points out of that. And then the Rams just kind of took over in the second half. Vince Ferragamo found his stride, and the Rams won that going away pretty easily.
An interesting note, I was just looking through various teams, and I noticed the 49ers have the 7th-ranked defense in the league. I'm not sure what to make of that.
I don't know either. You mean scoring defense or yardage defense?
Yeah, yardage per game.
Huh.
That can mean any number of things, but like you said, I mean, if you only had one play in the first half, that'll really help the defense out. So.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah.
Matchup of the same coaches that went the other way. Lou's Eagles staying in it, winning 12-7 over my Giants.
The Eagles, what? They're definitely not flying high. I'm not even sure they're flying. Are they even perched? I don't know what the Eagles are doing right now.
I think they're picking the vermin out of their own feathers at this point.
Yeah, we're going to have to put a pair of ice skates on the Eagles because they're really skating by. They barely beat the Cardinals. Now they barely beat the Giants. But they're 3-2. They're a good team, and I'm sure at the end they're going to be in the thick of it.
I will say about that game, I lost my only good defensive player. I'm not going to say my best defensive player, my only good defensive player, Brad Van Pelt, in the first half. And I was able to keep the score low nonetheless and have a chance to win late in the game. I had a possession deep in my own territory with a couple minutes to go, and it was 10-7 at the time, and I had a fourth and a bunch inside my own 5-yard line. So I'm not going to say I took the safety on purpose looking to set up the onside kick, but I did call a play-action pass. Not unhappy that the safety came, and I failed to recover the onside kick, so he ran out the clock.
Yeah, it seems like your odds are not too bad in that situation, given the odds of recovering the onside kick. So not a bad strategy. 12-7, you can't be ashamed of that loss. You only lost by 5 points to a really good team. So.
However, I did state my biggest goal for the season was to see the Giants finish ahead of the Eagles in the standings, and Jordan gave accolades to my manliness for stating that as a goal. I'm sorry to let him down on that one. Speaking of Jordan, his Dolphins lost to your Steelers 13-10.
Yeah, that game, let me just say, I'm not sure if he did, but I nearly fell asleep in that game because it was so boring. Neither offense could do anything. The Dolphins played goal line the entire time, and I might have had like 2 good plays. And then on the other side, the Dolphins really, I don't know if you're looking at the yardage, but they had
133.
About 100. If it wasn't, they had one pass late in the game that probably was about half of their total passing yards. And it was a weird play where I had a bunch of guys covering his deep wide receiver, and then I followed that guy when I saw he was going to throw it in with my linebacker. But by the time I got to the receiver, all my other computer guys disappeared, and it was just my linebacker there.
Huh.
So the guy caught the first touchdown. That was Matt Moore. And that was a late touchdown. That was like the only play the Dolphins had the entire game.
It was a 69-yard touchdown pass to Matt Moore on that play, it looks like.
Yeah, it was a disappeared actor. Still trying to figure out where those guys went. But it was a really, to be honest...
From the sounds of things, perhaps they got sleepy and just took a nap.
Probably. So yeah, the Steelers were up 13-3. Dolphins scored late. I think the Steelers got the onside kick and then just closed out the game. But the Dolphins actually got the ball back, but I think I sacked him on the last play. So.
And, all joking aside about how boring the game was, boring wins are wins. And before this, the Dolphins had not lost a human game. Jordan gave the skip game last week,
right.
the prior week to the Falcons. Jordan had such a hot start to the season, and the Dolphins were 3-1 going into that game. So you had to look at it as a big conference matchup, and it's one that the Steelers pull out to get the win and put themselves right there at the top of the AFC.
Yeah, it was a good win, and the Dolphins have the number 1 ranked defense in the league, and I can see why. They are almost impossible to do anything against. against.
They don't have great players, but he gets a lot out of them.
Yeah, I mean, he has the goal line positioned well with his fast running back. I think Gerald Small. You can't really get around the end, but the D line's pretty good, and it's really hard. Not that the Steelers' offense is good, good litmus test, but the Dolphins they're really they're heavy on the defense because their offense doesn't have a lot of firepower, but they're going to be a tough team because they're going to be hard to score on. So
you say that he was using Gerald Small. I think the site may have messed up the stats because it says Don McNeil had 11 tackles in the game.
No, it might have been Don McNeil. Then I mixed those guys up. Yep, that was my fault. Yeah, there's the two DBs back there. I forget. One of them has a lot of max speed, the other one doesn't. So he probably used whatever one did.
One thing I think we can't agree on is that there's nobody better at executing the goal line defense than Jordan. One of the things that I think he does really well is he hides whether he's covering deep or short by not moving laterally, just moving forward and backward. Do you understand what I mean?
I do, and I'll also say, without giving up any secrets, because I think I finally have a breakthrough with the goal line, but I'm not going to give that up.
Oh, come on.
The one thing I noticed is that he plays the goal line is better than anyone, and there's specific things he does that other people don't do that I'm not going to say for why he runs it better. So I'll just throw that out there. I noticed he's the best at running that defense.
If nothing else, I think we're all going to be looking for whatever the secret you uncovered is.
You have to, because you're going to face it so much, and I'll be honest, like in that Pittsburgh Dolphins game, I even told him, it makes me pull my hair out.
It's so frustrating.
You really just have to be so patient, and so it forces you to want to make a dumb play.
It does. I end up going for it on fourth down, like early in the game in my own territory. I shouldn't, I really do stupid things because I'm so frustrated.
Yeah, or just bait you into a bad pass or something, like various things. You just really have to be extraordinarily patient against that defense. If you don't keep the game close, then you're in trouble. And I think that could be part of the reason why teams have been getting blown out against the Dolphins, for example, because
letting it get out of hand early by doing dumb things.
Yeah,
that's what happened to the Patriots.
If he gets ahead of you by more than one possession, then you have to start to press. Then that's when mistakes happen, and then he can just roll on you. Yeah,
I was down 21-0 against the Dolphins early in the season before I even knew what was happening, and that's it. Okay, so speaking of teams at the top of the AFC, we had Slim's Chargers putting up a big number, 51 points against lose previously 3-1 Seahawks.
Seahawks are still in the playoffs though after week 5. I'm still going to throw that out there.
Huh? That's impressive. I think we'd all like to see that if we have teams in the AFC playoffs. I think Largent, he had no catches.
Yeah, they only had 30 yards passing. The Seahawks did. The Chargers went old school TLL and put up a 50 burger on the Seahawks. You don't see that many points scored very often anymore.
Yeah, I can't recall the last time we saw a 50-point game. I remember I had 55 or something against Kansas City in the very first season with Pittsburgh, and I can't remember seeing 50 points in a game since then.
Yeah, I don't think I've put up 50 since 1976. It's the same season you're talking about.
Things were definitely more stratified back then too. There was a bigger gap between the good teams and the bad teams. Sticking with Slim in our theme of more Slim on the podcast. His Jets, in a rain game, lost in overtime. Finally got an overtime win this year, I did, to my Bengals 35-28.
Oh, man, I watched that game. I believe that it was broadcast, and that was a game where, I mean, of course it was raining, and the defense would hardly ever show up in rain games, and you could tell because neither defense seemed to want to even play in that game.
I tell you what, that game, even though it was bad teams, it was fantastic good fun. Nobody punted.
Yeah.
Just looking at this quickly, the Jets had 255 yards. The Bengals had 339. Ken Anderson was untouchable. He completed just about everything he wanted, 8-12 for 185 yards. But really, he was just throwing at will. Charles Alexander averaged more than 20 yards a carry. Scott Dierking put up close to 200 yards. It was just rollicking good fun between two teams that probably aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, you have to love those games like that. And I really do think those Cincinnati, they're creeping, man. They're only 2-3. They're right there. I think they're not as talented as like the top end teams, but they have enough talent to push for a playoff spot. I really do believe that.
I do feel like I think started to understand how the talent on that team works, and I feel good about the team. So I'm not saying I'm going to make the playoffs with them or anything, but I do feel like I understand the team and I can do some things with them.
Yeah, so you just have to win those games, and there you are, 2-3, and only one game out of playoffs.
Moving along, Camfuna 8's final game in the Tecmo Legacy League involved you. Your Packers went into Detroit and beat the Lions 24-10 in what you said was a pretty uninspired performance from the camp.
I really have to thank him because Green Bay really needed a win.
And thank him for his service in the TLL and sticking it out.
Yeah, I don't want. He definitely, he tried, he played, but the Lions, you could tell the heart was not there. Meanwhile, the Packers they played pretty well. They played pretty solid, and they got the win. And to me, it was retribution from the week before where I lost to his Chiefs 17-10, and I had backup quarterbacks in Troop and Whitehurst, and they were just awful. So I felt like this one kind of made up for it. I was glad to get one of them, and now the Packers are going to get a 15 Week 6 win, and here they are, 3-3, man.
Who knows what can happen? I mean, that division could be a battle of attrition, so who knows what could happen down the road for the Packers. They're right in it.
I'll throw this out there real quick. The Packers had 186 yards rushing, and that was against goal line defense. So I'm just going to kind of tease that out there a little bit.
A team of yours that I think has more talent than Green Bay, your St. Louis Cardinals beat the previously upstart Washington football team 21-14.
Yeah, that's another game in which I'm going to tease it again. The Cardinals, 179 yards rushing, primarily against the goal line defense.
Otis is a beast.
Yeah, he really. I kept with it. He had a great second half. He wasn't breaking tackles in the first half, and that's what he needed. Second half, he really got it going. I had the lead for most of the game, as I tend to do, but I lose it at the end. I believe Washington eventually tied it. It was 14-14. I got the ball back, and then Otis ripped off what I believe, I don't have the exact number, about an 80-yard touchdown run to seal the game.
He had an 81-yarder.
81 yards, yeah.
One of the things that's remarkable, if you look at the stats of that game, is that Washington had 36 plays to your 12.
I noticed that, and that was, I didn't even notice it in the game. It wasn't until after the game I looked at the stats, and I was really surprised at that. I took the opening kickoff for a touchdown, so there was that, and then I honestly don't know what happened. I can't remember the game that well, but I know Otis had some big runs that could have been it, but I'm surprised in the disparity in the number of plays, yeah.
I have to say, I find myself in those kind of games all the time. I tend to get out-possessed by quite a bit, and I think that really hurts me.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure I understand why that happens.
I do too. Unless you have a high efficiency and you're scoring, then you're in trouble if you don't have as many plays. If you're scoring, you don't have as many plays, obviously. This sounds like a John Madden. If you're scoring, if you don't have very many plays, you're okay. But no,
because sometimes you score more points than the other team that way.
36-12 is unfathomable.
That really is hard to believe.
Crazy. And I think we had nearly the same amount of yardage too.
Yeah, it was close. I closed those stats because I'm moving on to the next game on our chart here. We'll welcome Eric Johnson to the Tecmo Legacy League with a fat 28-0 loss to the Denver Broncos and Brian.
Yeah, get the feet to the fire immediately. Why not?
It's a tough team. I know you're really high on the Broncos, and I know how talented they are, especially on defense. The Chiefs are not good. Let's just put it out there. I think they were 2-2 going into this game, but they're not good.
I think they have a good defense, but offensively they're limited. Especially their run game, they don't really have any good running backs. Their receivers and quarterback combo, they're not terrible, but they're not great. But I do think they have defensive playmakers to maybe be competitive.
The tax man is still there, ready to do some accounting for the young coach.
Yep, that's exactly right. So hopefully we'll get it going. It's tough, man. It's a tough learning curve, and Denver's a tough team to start out with. They're a really good team.
Yeah, and Denver themselves, they're looking to rebound after 2 disappointing seasons in a row where they missed the playoffs. So that's a big win for them as well, because that AFC West is currently a mess.
It's packed, man. The Chiefs are the last place team, but they're 2-3, and everyone else is 3-2, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right. And our final human game of the week was a big one. After falling to the Bears in overtime the previous week, Jordan looked to rebound with the Atlanta Falcons, who a lot of us thought were the best team in the league. But you went in there with your Bills and you beat them 37-26.
Jordan and I both agreed this was one of the weirdest games we've ever played. It was strange. It was frustrating for him.
It's certainly a weird score.
I took the opening kickoff back for a touchdown again. He got the ball. I believe I intercepted Bartkowski right away. Scored again, so I was up 10-0. Andrews fumbled sometime in there. I slowly built the lead, we'll put it that way, and it was 24-7 by halftime.
It was.
I was surprised. He wasn't doing anything on offense, really. The Bills' defense was playing excellent defense as they have all season long, and then
a fourth quarter that featured 32 points.
Yeah, at the beginning of the fourth quarter, I scored. I opened the fourth quarter scoring, so it was 31-7 in the game, with probably 3.5 minutes left or so, and then all of a sudden, I kicked off to the Falcons, and Chuck and Duck mode began, and Alfred Jenkins was just catching everything.
He went off for 6 catches for 251 yards and 3 of Bartkowski's 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, it was a silly fourth quarter. I did the stats in my write-up. The Falcons, I'm not sure, they only had 100. They ended up with a lot of yardage, but they only had maybe 150 or something before that craziness happened. But even Jordan wasn't happy with it. He hates doing that.
He said he was ashamed. He said he hopes he never sees a receiver of his with 251 yards again.
If it wasn't for Conrad Dobler, man, as I was saying, he bit someone in the pile and one of the onside kicks and returned it for a touchdown. So in between that, I got another I stopped the bleeding and got a touchdown. If it wasn't for that, I don't know. The Falcons might have come back and scored enough points to beat me.
That's why
kind of scary.
That's why Conrad's there to bite people.
It was like time was standing still in that fourth quarter. It couldn't end soon enough, and I couldn't believe it. It went so quickly from 31-7 to. It was crazy. It was a crazy game.
Let me cover just the last couple of skip game results. Brian chose the Browns over the Cowboys. Eric/Camp chose the Oilers over the Colts. We're scraping the bottom of the barrel talking about computer sims here.
Yeah.
So that's all the Week 5 action, and that ran a little long, but there was a lot to get to since we've been off for quite some time. Let's hear each other's power rankings.
All right, man.
Let's start with the top 5, and then we'll move to the second tier.
And then I'll eventually give you the bottom of the barrel. Okay, my power rankings. What I do is I basically calculate who teams are playing, how they're playing them. So you're getting quality of wins here. So record and who you're playing matters. So I have, in order, the Rams at number 1.
Ooh.
So the Dolphins at number 2. Could be a little skewed. You could argue that it should be higher, but it's going to be on the strength of the whole. And then I have, and we're not counting the Raiders' recent loss. And then I have the Broncos, Raiders, Falcons, and then the Bills. Maybe that's 6.
Wow.
6.
How do you have the league's only undefeated team so far down the list? Is this just modesty on your part?
I think it's not modesty. I think it's a combination of the Bills haven't really been blowing teams out. They've been squeaking by a lot of games, and their strength of schedule so far has overall been pretty weak. So they played the Jets twice. I think the Bengals are a good team. The Bengals are going to be toward the bottom of my power ranking still. And so that's 3 out of 5 games there. So really, they did beat the Oilers, who are a good team, but the Oilers still aren't really that great this season. So the only game the Bills have won, that's a quality win, I would say, really quality win, is against the Falcons. Good quality win. It's not enough to push them ahead of some of the other teams.
Well, they beat the only good team they faced, so my top 5 looks pretty different from yours, because I look at the only undefeated team in the league, and I can't look past them at number 1. I've got the Bears at number 2. I've got the Rams at number 3. I've got Pittsburgh at number 4, and I've got Denver at 5.
Yeah, I will agree. I think I just went off of a formula, and I probably, if I was just doing it on my own without sticking to it, mine would probably be a little different, because I think probably the Bears need to be pushed up there.
Boy, I tell you, those Bears,
the
they beat the Eagles in week 1, and even though Lou hasn't been performing with them, it's a great team. They did take a really heavy loss to Denver, but then they got back on track with 3 really high-quality wins, beating the Rams, beating Atlanta, and then beating division opponent in Minnesota in successive weeks. So, man, that team looks good.
That is, and I do have the Bears here at number 8, and they probably would be higher, but the way I do it, the fact that I think they lost, I don't know, it was really big.
35-7.
Or whatever it was to the Broncos, and so that pushed them down a little bit.
Well, what counts highest in my little formula here is the wins of the teams that you've beaten.
Yeah.
The Rams I have a little bit lower down on the list because they haven't beat too many quality teams yet. So we're waiting to see how they perform. But let's move on with your second tier. Where are you at on 6 through 10?
Okay, so actually I went a little too far there. So I do have the Bills at number 6, followed by the Cowboys, then the Bears, then the Steelers, then the Chargers, and then the Browns.
All right. Just by way of comparison, I have Atlanta, San Diego, New Orleans, Washington, and Oakland.
Okay.
But my formula does count in the recent loss by Oakland.
Yeah, Oakland so far has played really well, except they did lose to Denver, but I still have Denver really, I had them high up there too. So
in Brian's report on that game, he said that Oakland played really well and Hayes was an absolute menace. So they're a little bit further down my list, but I fully see them moving up.
Yeah.
So let's head the other way. What do you got down at the bottom?
If we're starting at the 28th worst team, this is kind of interesting because I have 3 AFC East teams as the 3 worst teams.
Yeah, I'm close on you there.
My worst team is the Colts, followed by the Patriots, then the Jets.
Yep.
And this is going to be controversial, but I have the 3-1 Saints, fourth from the bottom.
Really?
Yes. Yes, I do. And then the Bengals are just topping the Saints.
Oh, man, no love. No love.
No, and here's the thing with the Saints. They got blown out by the 49ers, and then their other wins, they just squeaked by like this. So they beat the Patriots by 1, and the Patriots are second to last. And then they beat Washington in overtime, and then I think they beat the Vikings. They're 3-1.
Those are two quality wins there. Washington, the Vikings. You can argue New England is a lot better than their record. I don't know. I think you're being pretty harsh on.
I think I am. I just think I'm being a little harsh. Like, I could see one team immediately that would be below them or should be below them. For instance, the Lions.
And I was thinking I was going to cause a controversy by saying that Kansas City is in my bottom 5. I'm the same as you on the bottom 3. Baltimore, in order, Baltimore, New England, Jets. Then fourth from last, I got Kansas City, and then just above them, I have Detroit.
Yeah, I could see that. I really could. I could see that. Probably those teams do deserve to be below the Saints. Even the Cardinals probably deserve to be below the Saints. But they're really they're 1-3 in man games.
The one win is a quality win, however.
It is, and they only lost their games. They're playing really tough teams, and they're not losing by that much. They only lost to Dallas 14-0, and then they lost to the Eagles by 3. What's interesting about the Cardinals is their worst game was against the Giants.
Hey, I was just gonna say, look who's in nobody's bottom 5: the New York Giants.
Yeah, you gotta love the Giants, man. Almost every year they're about 500, except for 1 year. No matter who's on the team, who the quarterback is, they always exceed expectations.
I fully intend for them to exceed expectations this year, and I realize the Rams are my only chance of any postseason glory, but I have to say I'm most closely connected to the New York Giants.
I would say with the Giants, so I've seen a lot of their games, and I really like what they bring. They're a feisty team. Their defense is actually pretty good. I mean, I'm not talking about on paper, but the way they play, it seems really fast. They cover pretty well, and offensively, you get a lot more out of that offense than you would think.
It's true.
So they're a tough team, man. They're not a pushover.
So, any teams that didn't appear in your power rankings that you think are worthy of conversation? Anybody you think might make a playoff push, or?
Yeah, I mean, the teams that we didn't talk about, well, I have two toward, probably, in the middle of the pack, the Vikings and the Eagles.
Yeah.
The Vikings, I still think they have a chance to push for that division. I don't think that division's over. I still consider that NFC Central open. And the Eagles are just too good not to make the playoffs. They are 3-2, but they're 1-2 in man games, so that's why they're down toward the bottom and they barely beat the Cardinals. But
2 years in a row, they have struggled throughout the season, made a late playoff push, snuck in there. Do you see them doing the same kind of thing this year?
I absolutely do. Yeah, they're too good. They're too good not to make it. And then the other teams that are there that could push ahead of them, I don't see them as being good enough. So I think the Eagles have to be one of those 6 teams.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I
think the one team that I don't think we've really even mentioned on the pod is Tampa Bay. And speaking of that NFC Central, you got Tampa Bay, Green Bay, and Minnesota, all of whom could make a push. And I just think it is a matter of, Brian's got Tampa Bay, you've got Green Bay, I've got Minnesota. It's a matter of which one of the three of us plays the best, I think. They're so so similar in terms of talent that it's down to us.
I would say probably the reason Tampa Bay hasn't been mentioned yet this year is because they've had a weird schedule. They've had a lot of hit games, but he's barely played with them.
We'll definitely hear more out of them.
Yeah.
So let's move it on to a new segment that we're going to call First and Goal.
First and Goal.
All right.
And in this segment, we're going to ask each other a couple of questions off the cuff and just see what kind of responses come out. So do you want to start it off? I know you prepared some questions to ask me.
Yeah, my first question for you would be, who is your favorite player from any of your TLL teams, meaning player and season? So not favorite player across the board, but player from a particular season.
Man.
From any of your teams.
Man, that is a good question, but a hard one to answer because there are a few ways that you could go with this. Okay, let me throw out some candidates. One thing that's always dear to my heart are good players on bad teams.
Right.
And that means a lot to me because those guys, they really make the season. You're going to have some bad teams every year, and you're going to have teams that struggle, and having good guys on those teams, makes you want to play and makes you want to push that team. And I think if we're talking about that kind of player, I'm going to look no further than Mark Cotney on the 1976 Bucks.
I love it, man. He's an original Buck, and that team was not a good team by any stretch of the imagination, but he made the all-pro team that year.
He had something like 100 tackles, 6 or 7 interceptions. I think he ran 5 or 6 kickoffs back for touchdowns. It was a 5-11 record, but you remember that the fake NFL team that team was based off of was 0-16. Just absolutely pitiful, and it was reflected in their roster. I mean, they had nothing.
Oh, definitely. No, they didn't have anything. And Mark Cotney, man, he was good. And I don't remember what his attributes were that season, but I just remember you just playing really well with him. And I love that he actually gained the votes of the league members, too.
I was very proud of what I accomplished with that team and him in particular. So that might be my answer. There are maybe more obvious answers. You know, Franco Harris, I don't even know if I can single out a particular year because he was so similar from one year to the next. The thing about Franco is I think he was injured every season I had him, but I still managed to get him over 1,000 yards, I think every year, maybe, or 3 of the 4 years that I had him. And he was
most years.
He was just such a rock for that offense, which really struggled kind of surprisingly. And on the other side of the ball with the same team, Jack Ham, the linebacker, who had high interceptions, and for a linebacker, he was just able to really patrol the field. And he never had high tackle numbers, but he was just so solid and so fast.
Good player. And I'll throw out there that we can probably predictably guess where Franco Harris is at right now. He's on the injured reserve list right now.
Yeah. He seems to have a knack for it.
He has like an 8-week injury or something this year. So
it's every year. I think I had an 8-week injury with him once. I had a 6-week injury with him. You know, a couple of shorter ones like 3 weeks. So always. It's got to be coincidence because it's not like Tecmo knows who they are.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting, as far as the roles go, they're just unlucky roles, but he's getting heavy injury roles every time, so it's been hard for him.
Somehow he's doomed. Well, let me ask you the same question. You asked the question, so maybe you had an answer in mind. Do you have a favorite player from a particular year?
I absolutely do, and it was reconfirmed when a few weeks back we played an old school 1976 Pittsburgh-Denver game.
My God, was I drunk.
And we haven't played with those teams in so long, and the 1976 Denver team is probably my favorite team of any of the teams I played with. And one particular guy on that team, Tom Jackson, man. That guy.
Nightmare.
It was so awesome, and it made me realize why did I blitz a lot with him, because he is insanely fast.
He's lightning fast. I think I remember
faster than probably any other linebacker or defensive player I've used. Maybe Ken Houston compares, but
Ken Houston, there's another one. Yeah, he was awesome. I love that guy. We both had him, but I remember Tom Jackson, and I think I actually remember this stat accurately. When you decided to start blitzing with him during the middle of the season, maybe week 7, week 8, I think it was. Those next 3 games, he piled up 16 sacks in 3 games.
Right. He was a terror, and it was just a new thing, a new wrinkle that in there. It didn't last very long, but it was something to show coaches. Yeah. And I had the luxury of being able to use it because the 1976 Broncos also scored a lot of points. So I was often up in games, so he could take chances like that. But he just got in there so quickly.
It was something that most of us had not seen in human games, and we just weren't used to. I can see why you'd go right there.
Yeah.
All right, well, I got a question for you.
Okay.
Keeping with our theme of more Slim on the pod, what do you consider to be Slim's greatest TLL achievement?
Oh, well, that's obvious. Well, let's see. Well, it's pretty obvious, and both of them came against me. First and foremost, I have no idea how this happened. This came against the 1977 Broncos, who I also controlled. Burt Jones was injured, and I was playing Bill Troop. Random
there
Bill
it
Troop.
is.
And I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. But no, Bill Troop set the single-season passing
335
passing record, which still hasn't been broken. He was completing everything in that game. I just remember so many guys jumped up and caught balls. I couldn't do anything against them the entire game, and here's the oddest thing about that game. I lost that game in overtime with the Broncos, but with Burt Jones at quarterback, I beat the Colts with the Saints, who were 1-15 that year. That was the only game I won. So I beat the Colts with Burt Jones with the Saints, but couldn't beat the Colts with Bill Troop with the Broncos. And I was 13-3 with the Broncos.
He's still. That was 4 seasons ago.
Yeah. And
it's got to be like just about 2 years ago in real time that this actually happened. And
right.
It still sounds kind of fresh for you there.
It's not even frustrating. It's actually I think it's actually kind of funny because you can't explain it. It's like, how does Bill Troop of all quarterbacks a single game passing leader? You just had no explanation for it.
That's Tecmo for you.
And then I'll say a close second is Slim set it was the year I was doing really well with Isaac Curtis. He continuously broke his own record for most receiving yards in a game. And I had the Giants, and I was playing the Cardinals, and Mel Gray shattered Isaac Curtis's record. So Slim...
Yeah, I remember he went for over 300, but I don't remember what it was.
335, I think. Something like that. And so Slim in 1 year set 2 records against you. So I have to say those are some of the best achievements.
I got a couple to throw out there. One, I think still the worst team to ever make the TLL playoffs has to be the 1976 Saints. Slim accomplished. He started out like 8-1 that year and snuck in the playoffs at what, 9-7, I think?
9-7.
Yeah. So yeah, he started out at like 8-1, went 1-7, snuck into the playoffs, and my memory of that is two games that he played against me. I had San Francisco that year, so I was in his division, and the 2 games I was up by 4 points late. I don't remember what the scores were, like really late with seconds to go, and on the last play of the game, as the starter pistol fired, he drops back, and I think it was Bobby Douglas or
who's the other guy? I can't remember the other. They were both really bad quarterbacks.
Yeah,
put it that way.
But it was Douglas that he used, and he heaved deep to fullback Tony Galbraith, who collected them in heavy traffic in the end zone for 2 wins over my Niners. San Francisco would have made the playoffs that year if it wasn't for those 2 games. And then the other thing that I think, this is going to be a little cheesy, but I think Slim's greatest TLL achievement has to be like the creation and the maintenance of our great website.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I mean, that is true.
I was going there the whole time, but I didn't expect you to think along those lines.
Yeah, it's hard not to when you have Bill Troop dancing around in your head.
Okay, I know we both had more questions to ask, but the pod is running a little long because we had been off for so long. So let's hold on to those questions for a future episode, because I got some good ones that I want to hear from you. And now let's move on to some Week 6 predictions.
Predictions.
Boy, a tough welcoming party continues for poor Eric. His Oilers have to face Jordan's Raiders, who are probably going to be angry.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough game. It's going to be the Raiders.
Yeah, it sure is, isn't it?
I think Lester Hayes, man, is going to be a welcome Eric and welcome Ken Stabler to the league. Ken Stabler hasn't thrown very many passes this year, but if you notice, his completion percentage is abysmal.
Let me tell you, Lester Hayes is not a completion percentage helper.
No, he's not at all. I got to have to see the Raiders. It's going to be tough. It's tough for Eric. He'll have to use into it, but he'll take his lumps and learn from them.
He has a shot to prove himself in the next game on our schedule. He takes the Lions into Chicago to face those hot Bears.
Ooh, that's tough, too. I have to go with the Bears. I told Eric last night that I thought the Lions had the most talent of any of his teams. He thought maybe it was Houston, but I really think it was the Lions. But it's going to be tough. Chicago's playing super well. Slim has him moving. It's gonna be hard because Eric's still gonna be in the adjustment mode, and you have to go with the Bears.
It's almost too bad that this game comes so soon on Eric's schedule, because if he had a couple of weeks of practice underneath him, he's gonna grow. And Detroit does have all that talent, but it's a tough game. And no offense to Eric, but he is learning still, and I think the Bears are gonna have too much.
Yeah, I believe so.
And here's another one: the Kansas City Chiefs go into Minnesota to face my Vikings. What do you think?
I have to go with the Vikings. I mean, I hate to keep going against Eric here, but the Chiefs had struggled against the Broncos. They barely beat the Packers. I know it's 2 different coaches, but the Vikings have been playing pretty well this season, and, you really need a victory here. I cannot see the Vikings dropping this game.
Coming off of 2 overtime losses, I'm pissed, and I'll tell you, he's going to see a whole lot of Ted Brown.
It's going to be rough.
So I hope to not make Eric's welcoming party any happier. Speaking of teams that aren't very good, the New England Patriots face off against the San Diego Chargers of Slim.
Why the hell not? I'm going upset special. Patriots over the Chargers.
Yeah, that's what we like to hear.
I'm going for it. I'm
going for it too. And I'm going to broadcast that game to the entire league, and you can all watch it. They are getting off the schneid. Over in the NFC East, a couple of important matchups. The biggest one would be Bryant's Cowboys versus Slim's Washington football team.
I'm going with the Cowboys. Washington Slim's still doing well with them, but they're on a bit of a slide since they're early. They got off to a hot start. They're starting to come back down to earth, and I think Dallas will win this game.
Yeah, I almost don't even want to pick. I know that that's not the point of predictions, and we have to pick. I haven't seen anything impressive from the Cowboys this year. Not yet. They got talent. They've got all kinds of talent on defense. They've got Tony Dorsett. They've got great wide receivers, but I've yet to see it.
Yeah, they're not as dominant as they've been in previous seasons, but they're still. He took a skip game, lost them, but they're 3-1. Yeah, they lost to the Giants. They didn't play the greatest against the Cardinals, but they're steady. They're winning. I think it should be a really good game. And Washington, has the goods. They have the 2 elite cornerbacks. We'll see. I still think Dallas is going to pull it out. I think Dallas will pull it out.
I'm going to go with that too, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're both wrong. Another NFC East team, we got lose Eagles against Brian's Saints. The Saints have the great record, but obviously the Eagles are far more talented. I'd love to be a fly on the wall for this one.
Yeah, it's weird because the Eagles aren't playing up to potential. The Saints, in my opinion, are overachieving. This is such a tough one, but I want to have to say the Eagles. The Eagles will win this.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going Saints. After that heavy loss against the 49ers, I think the Saints are going to be angry. Brian's a great passer. He's got good passing weapons on that team. Tommy Myers, he's just good enough, and the Eagles can't do crap on offense. So
their offense has not been that good, and also defensively, they're really underachieving. But they have the means there to do it. Well, we'll see. Will this be the week that Lou gets them going?
Like I say, I'm gonna disagree, and I'm saying that the Saints are going over, around, and through Randy Logan.
I'm going a close game, though. I'm going like 3-point game, 20-17, somewhere around there. But I'll go with the Eagles, touch them out.
Same coaches. Lose Seahawks against the Bucks of Brian.
This one is so hard to call because, to be honest, the Bucks are an enigma. No one's seen them play. I don't even know what to expect from them. I doubt Brian even knows what to expect from them.
I played with the Bucks a lot in the preseason. I really wanted the Bears in this draft, but I didn't think I would get them. So I saw that cluster of the three NFC teams, or NFC Central teams, Tampa, Minnesota, and Green Bay. And I played a lot with Tampa. Boy, they had potential, but I ultimately didn't like them.
Yeah, I didn't like as per usual with the Bucks, is that their offense always seems weak. They're not high powered. Here's the thing about the Seahawks: they can score. They have a legitimate offense. They have a really good offense.
Do they have a legitimate offense, or do they just throw to Largent on every play?
No, well, here's the thing. They do sometimes, and I've given Lou crap for that, but sneaking in there is Jim Jodat, man. And he's actually
Who dat?
in terms of rushing. So the Seahawks can score a lot of points. This is kind of weird to pick Lou to sweep Brian. So there might be something wrong here in my predictions, but I'm going to say the Seahawks are going to be able to score too much against the Bucs, and that's going to be the difference.
I'm going against the people here, and I'm saying the people champ is going down again. I'm going with the Bucs by probably 10 points.
No love for the people champ.
No, none. Well, this one I think we'll probably agree on paper. Denver Broncos, Brian, versus Slim's New York Jets. I think it's hard to look past the Broncos in this one.
Yeah, there's no way the Jets can win that. I've played the Jets a couple times, and I've seen them, and this is not against Slim at all. It's just that they're definitely one of the worst teams on the round. And the Broncos are really good, and the Broncos are going to win this.
Yep.
They'll shut the Jets down. I don't think the Jets will score that much. I think it's going to be like 35-10.
I was going to say 35-7, so we're close on that.
Yeah.
Boy, things just don't get any easier. You are undefeated Buffalo Bills versus the winless Baltimore Colts, newly inherited by Eric.
Oh, I hate to say it. Like I said, I hate predicting games that I'm in. And for one thing, I just,
Come on, Steve.
I don't want to jinx myself. But
Come on, Steve.
The Bills will win this game.
Yes.
The Colts, I've already been on record as saying I think the Colts are the worst team on the round.
They do have Curtis Dickey, who's pretty good. He's fast, so he might be able to find some love there. But it's hard to see him really moving the ball consistently against that incredible defense the Bills have.
Yeah, and they don't seem to have anything on defense as far as what I've seen. I don't know who you would use as a man player.
No, there's a linebacker that's not too bad. Maybe Stan White, I think, is still there.
Yeah,
he's okay.
Eric may use him, and I know Camp was using Nesby Glasgow or whatever, but I don't know. It's tough, man. There's not a lot of options on that team.
No, and you have a whole lot of options. Like, you could have 4 injured guys on Buffalo's defense and still be fine.
Let's not have that happen, though.
Yeah, right. Oh, boy, my 2-3 Giants against Brian's, I think, 3-2 Browns.
Oh, this is one of those ones where I have a feeling the game's going to be more competitive. You might think. I have to go with the Browns, though. I think I still I'm like the Browns cheerleader, basically.
Yeah, no, you sure are.
I think they're going to be there. They're going to be there in the end. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm not going to be surprised if they come back to take the division lead. The Giants, I don't know. I think the Browns are going to have too much firepower for the Giants. Although I say that every week for the Browns, just because their offense is ridiculous. They have the best offense on the ROM, I think, except for maybe the Chargers.
Yeah, definitely not as good as the Chargers.
I just expect them to score like 28 to 30 points like every game. It hasn't happened, but I just expect it. And we'll see. I don't know if the Giants can maintain.
Okay, so unlike you, my policy, never pick against my teams. Never. So I'm picking the Giants in this game.
There you go.
But if I was not involved, I probably would look at the lack of Brad Van Pelt in this game as a major blow to the Giants' chances, and I don't know how I'm going to stop. I am going to stop the Cleveland offense. I just don't know how I'm going to do it. So I'm going Giants.
Right.
here's an interesting matchup. Miami Dolphins, Jordan, coming off that loss versus lose 49ers, who have been not terrible.
It's going to be the Dolphins.
Yeah, it probably is, right?
And I predict the 49ers have less than 50 yards of offense.
Wow.
That's my prediction.
They got receivers, though. They got the HOFer, and they've got Dwight Clark. I think Clark's healthy again, right?
He's healthy. Yeah, you might be right. I mean, the 49ers don't like to rush the ball anyways. It doesn't matter. The Dolphins can play goal line all they want, and it probably doesn't matter. But, yeah, I think it's going to be the Dolphins, though.
It's hard to disagree. I still just don't know how to make sense of the 31-0 win that the 49ers had over the Saints. I just don't get it. It doesn't fit.
I don't understand that either. It's what makes the league really interesting because you don't expect that. It's weird. But, the Saints in and of themselves are, something tough to figure out. But then they go ahead and their only losses to get blown out by the 49ers.
Yeah,
so,
it's really strange. I don't know. Maybe it's even too early in the season to be making predictions, but here we are anyway.
Yeah, might as well.
Let's see. Here's a big one between you and me. An AFC Central matchup. Your Steelers 4-1 versus my 2-3 Bengals. On paper, it looks like Steelers, but I'm not so sure.
That's a tough one. I think this is it's going to be a really, really tough game. It's no secret the Pittsburgh offense has not been good at all.
I'm going to give you a good game. I gave you a good game with Buffalo, with using Cincinnati, and I'm going to give you a good game with Pittsburgh. I could see Cincinnati. I could see Cincinnati pulling this game out, even if I wasn't involved.
I could too. To be honest with you, I don't think there's a huge disparity between the two teams. I mean, Pittsburgh, they're 4-1. Their defense is ever since week 1 has played awesome. For some reason, they weren't good against Washington. I don't know why, but since then they've been all over the place. But it's going to be the same old thing for the Steelers, and I'm struggling with the same thing you struggle with. How do you get points on the board? It's
just something about Bradshaw. I just never quite got figured out.
He is not good this year. I think he's completed like 44% of his passes. He has 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. I hardly, which I guess isn't really giving the game plan away, but I hardly ever throw deep with him because every time I do, it gets intercepted.
Yeah.
Or it's like so far off target.
No, you get scared because you know it's not going to be good. I'm going to be doing a rain dance for that game. So hopefully Pittsburgh's defense won't show up and I can get Charles Alexander moving again. One more human game to talk about, and it's probably the biggest game of the week. The Atlanta Falcons come off 2 straight losses, Jordan, and they take on my Los Angeles Rams. We're 4-1.
Oh, wow.
My question is to you, Steve. I just want to know, do you know how to ram it?
Oh, man. Do I ever, man. Let's just put it this way. The Bills had a lot of former Rams on their team.
It's true.
And they sure as hell rammed the Falcons last week, put it that way.
Could it be a 3-game losing streak for the Falcons? I mean, it's no secret what I'm predicting. I'm saying Rams 21-7. And do you realize the Rams have only given up 34 points this year?
I did not realize that. That's impressive. That's really impressive. I'm going with the Falcons in this one.
Ooh.
I think the Falcons are going to get off their 2-game skid. It can be had. The question is, do you have the secret formula to beat them? You might. The Rams have what it takes to beat the Falcons. It's going to be tough. I think it'll be a close game. Going like 17-14 Falcons.
I tell you, Vince Ferragamo has been outstanding this year. Just he's not showing up with the big numbers, but he's been so reliable. He's got such a big arm that he can fit in those short passes before the defense has a chance to cover. So, it's going to be a lot of that. I don't expect to be able to run the ball really effectively, but I haven't been counting on that with the Rams anyway.
Yeah, you might be able to. It depends on. I think you have the means to do it. And Ferragamo is such a huge addition to the Rams from last year. That's what they were lacking. I mean, yes, they're still lacking the star wide receivers, but they didn't have really a good quarterback last year or a guy who could thread the needle. They finally had that this year. Here's the thing, which I'm pretty sure, I looked at the stats briefly, I'm pretty sure the Falcons duo of Lawrence and, is it Kenny Johnson? Is that the other cornerback?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe combined they have the most interceptions of any tandem in the league.
Wow.
Like 7 or something like that. I think one has 4, one has 3.
So I was not aware of that.
It's going to be a chess match there.
All right. Well, that will be one that will be broadcast, and we'll let you know when that game's going to be played because I'm sure people are going to want to watch. And finally, we do have one skip game this week, and it's yours. I don't know if you want to tip your hand just yet, but it's the Green Bay Packers versus the St. Louis Cardinals. Probably going Packers in this one?
Yeah, I'm tipping my hand. It is the Packers. And here's the thing. This is why the Packers beating the Lions was so huge. Because if I were to have lost that game, that would have put I would have had 2 teams at 1-4.
Yeah, right.
1-4. And so then it made the skip game choice really hard. I needed the Packers to get to 2-3. 500, that's a good position for them to be in. I have to be happy with that.
I tell you, if you get to the end of the year 500 with the Packers, you've done something. And who knows, maybe you can squeak it to 9-7.
I'm not saying the Packers will make the playoffs, but the way the NFC
They could.
is, it seems like there's going to be a 9-7 team that'll make the playoffs.
I agree with that. I think so too. NFC is kind of a war of attrition, and people are dropping like flies over there too.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, that's all the Week 6 games, and that'll be it for us. Sorry for a long podcast this week, but like I said,
the people wanted it though. The people wanted it.
They did, and we had a lot to cover because we'd been out of touch. That won't happen again. We'll hear.
Yep.
We'll talk again in 2 weeks when the new Week 7 ROM comes out. So yeah, thanks for the chat, Steve. I'll be looking for you on the Tecmo Gridiron, and all the rest of you out there, play your games.
Right on, man. Take care.
To keep abreast of all the TLL action, head over to scottzolak.com/thelegacy. For live game broadcasts, tune into twitch.tv/TecmoLegacy and follow us on Twitter at TecmoLegacy for notifications when we go live. And for much, much more on Tecmo Super Bowl, visit tecmobowl.org.